Massive studies have found time and time again that about 80 to 85% of our health outcomes are actually based on our environment and our lifestyle. So that means only 15 to 20% of the health that we have or don't have is based on our genetics. I often have heard this quote that says, your genes load the gun, but your lifestyle pulls the trigger. Hello, my friends. Welcome to It's All Magic. I am your guide, your host, and your friend, Devin Hine. And here we'll be discussing how to make your life truly feel like magic. I believe that our very existence on Earth is nothing less than a miracle, and that we all have so much potential to learn, to grow, to experience, and to create during our short time here. It is both my passion and my pleasure to walk this path of life optimization by your side, where we'll discuss topics like passion, purpose, intuition, manifestation, physical well-being, and much, much more. I'm a yoga teacher, a meditation and breathwork facilitator, and a national board certified health and wellness coach. But more importantly, I am an eternal optimist, a lover of life, and a forever student. It is my hope that with each and every episode, you too will finally start to believe it really is all magic after all. Ready to dive in? Let's do it. Hello, my friends. I am so excited to see you here. I am absolutely thrilled about today's episode. Before we get into today's episode, I just have one question for you, just to see if you're even interested in today's content. Have you ever wondered how one lives a long life? How one lives the good life for a long time? How to live well into your 90s or even 100s without disability and without disease? Have you essentially ever sought for the fountain of youth? If the answer to any of those questions is yes, or perhaps even a heck yes, then you have come to the right place, my friend. Today, I am going to be sharing essentially the secrets of longevity. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to be full of a lot of fantastic information that will inspire you and motivate you for the new year. But as always, before we dive into all of the good content, I want to give us a moment to take our deep breaths. If you are a pretty frequent It's All Magic podcast listener, you'll know that I am a big fan of giving us the opportunity to just tune in with ourselves, slow down, and just take a freaking exhale. We are so good at taking the inhale or holding our breaths, but it takes a lot to just let it go. So we're going to do that exact thing today. So I'm going to guide us through 3 deep breaths. We'll keep it very simple today. So I'll invite us all to inhale through the nose and then just open mouth, sigh it out through the mouth. We'll do that 3 times. And then I invite you, if you're able to keep your eyes closed for that, to keep your eyes closed a little longer for a short but very powerful guided meditation. So if and when you're ready, I am going to flutter closed my eyelids. If you have the opportunity, I invite you to do so. But even if you can't, I still would love for you to join us in these deep breaths and this guided meditation. Okay, so just starting to settle in, maybe rolling your shoulders down your back, taking the small movements you might need. And then just emptying out from your previous breath. Inhale fully through the nose, breathing in all the way. And open mouth, let it all go. 2 more. Inhale through the nose, filling up even deeper. open mouth, sigh it out. Last one, fullest inhale yet. And open mouth, let it all go. Beautiful. Keeping your eyes closed if you can. And coming back to a normal breathing pattern, but continuing to take those full inhales through the nose and then just letting it out, perhaps now through your nose. Just allowing that exhale to move slowly through your nostrils. Beautiful. And as we sit here, or perhaps you're walking, perhaps you're standing, you can still join in. I invite you to imagine that today is your 100th birthday. And it's a very special day because not only is it your 100th birthday, but you know that that evening you have a special birthday party that all of your loved ones have planned for you. And you cannot wait to see all of your favorite people in one room together. So, as the evening time approaches, the time of your party comes closer, you start getting giddier and giddier. There are people that will be there that you haven't seen in a long time, others that you see all the time. But even so, you know that you'll just feel so loved and excited when you see your people. So it's finally time for the party. You enter into the room and you see all of your favorite people there. Your favorite family members, your favorite friends, neighbors, acquaintances. And you cannot help but smile so wide when you see each of their faces in the room. So as you look around, who do you see? Who is standing there that just makes you feel so warm and fuzzy inside? Who there always makes you laugh? From the second you see them, something about them just makes you giggle. Who there makes you feel so seen for exactly who you are? They just know who you are at your core and they accept you for it. And who there just feels like a great support system for you. You know that they always have your back, no matter what and no matter when you need them. So just look around the room and notice who's there at your party. Who were you so excited to see? And who was so excited to see you and to celebrate you? Remember, those are your people. That is your support system. That is the room full of all the love you could ever need in this world. And as the night progresses, it's declared that everyone will raise a glass and toast to you. And in each person's toast, they share their favorite things about you, their favorite stories about you. And you just get to sit there and listen and soak it all in. So when the toasts begin, what are people saying about you? What is everyone's favorite thing about you? The characteristic that makes you so uniquely you and special? What do people come to you for? When they're struggling with something in their own lives, what are you the go-to person for? And what stories are these loved ones telling about you? What does everyone seem to notice about you and love about you? So just feeling so surrounded by love and support and knowing that these people see you for exactly who you are and that they know how awesome you are. Let's take one last deep breath just to breathe in all the love. So breathing in through the nose, filling up with that love and support. And open mouth, let the rest go. Beautiful. You can flutter open your eyelids if you got the chance to close them. I hope that you enjoyed that meditation and that you truly felt like it was your 100th birthday and like you were being celebrated by the people that matter most and the ones that see you for exactly who you are. I think sometimes when we imagine that we are the older version of ourselves and there are people there celebrating us and talking about what they notice about us, it just helps put everything in perspective. And it helps to remind us of who we really are, how people view us in this world, and what good we've brought into the world, especially on the days when we have forgotten. So, with that meditation behind us, we will finally move into today's amazing topic. So the topic we're discussing today is something known as the blue zones. This is a topic that I have taught about, led workshops on countless times because I am utterly obsessed. I mean, I personally don't know how someone would not be obsessed with the idea of longevity. So many of us, I would almost venture to say everyone in the world, wants to live a long life. There's just so much to do in this lifetime. So many people that we get to meet and love and learn about. So many passions we can explore. So many hobbies we can have. So many careers we can jump between. There's just too much to do in one lifetime. So I don't know about you, but I want it to be extremely long. I have too much on my bucket list, too much on my to-do list, and I need to be around for a long time. So if, like me, you want to be around for a long time, but not only that, you want to be around in a healthy, happy body, then today's episode is for you. So the blue zones are the 5 longevity hotspots in the world. There are these 5 places on the globe that hold the highest number of centenarians. So a centenarian is someone who lives to 100 and beyond. Scientists have found these 5 hotspots to be quite fascinating. What are they doing that the rest of us aren't? Why do they have so many people living these incredibly long lives? What can we learn from them and incorporate into our own lives so that we can live a long, happy, and healthy life as well? So if you're curious about any of those questions, then stay tuned. And I just want to dedicate this episode to Juan Ponce de Leon. If you don't know who that is, he was a Spanish conquistador in the 15th and 16th century who was well known for searching for the fountain of youth. And he is not the only one. This is an obsession that many humans have, trying to figure out how to find the secrets of longevity. So I dedicate this episode to our dear friend, Juan Ponce de Leon, but also to everyone else and to all of us who have ever wondered how to just optimize this thing called life. So before I tell you where these blue zones are and explain a little bit about them, I want to just highlight what is so fascinating and important about the blue zones. So the first is there's kind of this myth that we have all been taught, which is that our genetics determine our health outcomes. That is completely incorrect. Massive studies have found time and time again that about 80 to 85% of our health outcomes are actually based on our environment and our lifestyle. So that means only 15 to 20% of the health that we have or don't have is based on our genetics. I often have heard this quote that says, your genes load the gun, but your lifestyle pulls the trigger. So what I find incredibly empowering about this statement is that we actually have the capacity and we have the potential to determine our own health outcomes. Granted, there will always be freak accidents or things outside of your control. That's not what I'm saying here. But I'm saying that for the vast majority of us, we can take our own health into our own hands. And the reason why we know about the impact of lifestyle and environment on our health outcomes is that even when we look at these blue zones, these longevity hotspots are geographically located rather than genetically determined. So, for example, it's not that all Persians everywhere in the world live a long life, but it is that people in these 5 close-knit communities in these certain locations live a long life because they all have a very similar lifestyle. So that's the important part. And, there's an incredible story that just highlights the power of our environment and our lifestyle on our health outcomes. So there's a story of this man, Stamatis Moraitis, who is an Ikarian Greek. So Ikaria, Greece is one of the 5 hotspots we will be exploring in today's episode. But in Stamatis Moraitis' story, he was a young boy growing up in Greece, and he decided to move to America when he was an adult. So he made his way to America. He ended up getting married, having children, and actually living the American dream. He had this great career as a painter and a husband and a father and the white picket fence and the house. And then in his 60s, he was diagnosed with late stage cancer and was told that he would have less than a year to live. And so thinking that he wanted to live out the rest of his life in peace and then be buried side by side with his family members and friends, he moved back home with his parents to Ikaria, Greece. So he moved back into their home and started simply adopting his old Greek lifestyle. So he started napping and gardening and walking into the city center to play games and drink with his friends. And before you know it, he lived past that year. In fact, he ended up living into his hundreds. And when he was in his 80s, he decided, I want to go back to America, go talk to my doctors and see what happened. Why did I not die? And when he went back to America to talk to his doctors, every doctor that had ever worked with him was all dead. So if that story is not the perfect story of how our lifestyle so deeply impacts our health, then I don't know what is. And that's an example of what's called a migrant study. So a migrant study is just another way of looking at how when we relocate somewhere and adopt the habits and lifestyle of that place, that actually impacts our health outcomes more than any genetics ever could. With that as our foundation, let's dive into the actual blue zones. So where are these blue zones and what can we learn from them? So the 5 blue zones are Ikaria, Greece, Sardinia, Italy, the Nicoya Peninsula of Costa Rica, Okinawa, Japan, and Loma Linda, California. So I'll go through each of them and tell you some little important, helpful snippets that we can learn from each of these communities. And then I will also share with you the 9 things that every single longevity hotspot has in common that we can adopt into our own lives. So the first hotspot that I mentioned is Ikaria, Greece. And what's important to know about Ikaria, Greece is that they have truly mastered stress reduction. These people nap so regularly that their stress levels are nowhere near ours. And napping has actually been proven to massively decrease our risk for heart disease and other diseases. And so if you find yourself a little too stressed and perhaps you have an extra 30 minutes or an hour on your hands each day, maybe you take that to nap. So these people are known as the people that just forget to die. So you might remember the story that I just told of our dear friend Stamatis Moriitis. He was an Ikarian Greek. So when he moved back home, as I mentioned, he was napping, he was gardening, he was drinking with his friends in the town center, and he was living a good life. He was working in the vineyard, and so it was a slow, kind of even-keeled life. And somehow that lifestyle works its magic, and these people live for a long, long time. It's also been said that in Ikaria, time doesn't really matter. In the Western world, at least in America, from where I'm speaking, we are so obsessed with time, and we follow strict schedules and strict routines, and it's not that way in Ikaria. It was said in the Blue Zone's book that if you tell your friend to come over for dinner in Ikaria, Greece, they could come anywhere between 2 p.m. and 8 p.m. And they come over and you hang out. And so that's just another example. They have more of this easygoing attitude. They're napping, they're drinking, they're gardening, they're just going over to each other's houses when they want, and it works. So that is Ikaria, Greece. Number 2 is Sardinia, Italy. The first thing I want to say about Sardinia is that you might notice the word Sardinia sounds a lot like a word we have in English, sardonic. Sardonic, of course, means sarcastic. Sometimes even a little rude, sassy, spicy kind of sarcasm. And that word we get from Sardinia, Italy, because these people have that kind of attitude. And I feel like that attitude is really conducive to a long life. I mean, we all even know that old person that's kind of sassy and grumpy, and they just keep on keeping on. So I think we can all learn something from even just that sardonic Sardinia attitude. But beyond that, what's really interesting about this place is that in most developed areas, the ratio of female centenarians to male centenarians is about 4-1. So women live a lot longer than men. But when you look at Sardinia, their ratio is 1-1, meaning that the Blue Zone's effect is far stronger for men. Why is this, you may ask? The reason is that the women hold all of the stress. The men in Sardinia tend to have these pretty simple, low stress, lightly active jobs like shepherding, for example, or gardening or taking care of a vineyard. Meanwhile, the women are taking care of the household and the children and the finances and the cooking and the cleaning and everything in between. And so one wife was asked, what do you think about the dynamics between husbands and wives and men and women in this society? And she said, Tonino lives to work from early morning to late night. Meanwhile, I take care of the house, the children, and the finances. I make sure we don't run out of money. He works, I worry. So it just shows that the men are, off just doing these kind of light jobs where they can walk around. It's not too much stress. Meanwhile, the women are really bearing the burden of worries and stress, and it ends up having a negative outcome on the length of their lives. It just shows how strong stress can really impact our longevity and health. So that is what we can learn from Sardinia. Number 3 is the Nicoya Peninsula of Costa Rica. What's really interesting about this area is that most of Costa Rica is absolutely ravaged by stomach cancer, extremely high rates of stomach cancer. But the Nicoyans are not. And the reason why is because they eat an absurd amount of fruit. So for those of you listening who have heard that fruit is not good for us, it's too high in sugar, that is simply not true. these Nicoyans are actually protected by the vitamin C, the beta carotene, the polyphenols, the antioxidants, the vitamins and minerals held within this fruit to the point where they do not suffer stomach cancer at the same rate as the rest of the Costa Ricans, who they are genetically the same as. So let that just be a testament to the power of fruit to heal us and keep us healthy and safe. I also love that in Nicoya, they have this concept of la pura vida, which means the pure life, the good life, the simple life. And they really try to find that sweet spot between not having too much time on your hands where you're just sitting around thinking, pondering, but also not being so busy and stressed that you can't rest and relax and enjoy life. When this one woman was asked what she does when she gets bored, she says, well, I find a patch of shade and I eat an orange. So I think that can also be just a really peaceful reminder for all of us in this fast-paced, overstimulated Western world that sometimes all you need is a patch of shade and a good orange. Moving on to number 4, we have Okinawa, Japan. Okinawa, Japan is fascinating for many reasons. There's a lot that I could say about Japan, but I'll start with this. Back in 1605, the sweet potato was brought over from China to Japan, and it became such a popular, prevalent part of the diet that by 1902, when most of these Okinawan centenarians were growing up, 80% of the Okinawan diet was composed of potatoes, Japanese sweet potatoes. So for all of us that have been taught that carbs are bad for us, that potatoes are fattening, it is simply not true. So far we have talked about fruit being incredibly healing, and now we're learning the same about potatoes. Who would have thought it? And so these centenarians were growing up on an extremely carb-heavy diet. They were eating all the potatoes, and they lived an incredibly long life. So that was the first thing I wanted to highlight. The second is this concept of ikigai, which means reason for being. It's essentially the purpose behind one's life. And in Okinawa, you could ask anyone, what's your ikigai? And they would actually have an answer for you. And it's not always to do with one's career either. You know, these Okinawans find their ikigai, their purpose, their reason for being in their community, in their spiritual beliefs, in their family. And it's such an important part of their life. In fact, something I find fascinating is that there isn't even a word for retirement in the Okinawan dialect. And why that's so important is that retirement often leads to mental and physical decline. Now, I'm not saying that you can never leave behind your 9 to 5 and find a different lifestyle, but I mean, it's really important to hold on to something that brings you a sense of meaning, or else retirement may lead to decline. And in Okinawa, they so strongly hold on to their ikigai that they can honestly will themselves to keep living. The third thing that I want to touch on is a concept of moai. So a moai means meeting for a common purpose. And it is actually this small group of friends that is built or composed when a child is very young. So when a child is extremely young, it might even be honestly in their first year of life, they are paired up with this other group of kids their age, and they meet every single day for their entire lives. And so those groups are called moais. And the moai is such an important part of the community, because not only does it offer this sense of support to one another, to those within the group, But even during financial hardships, if one of the members of the group is struggling, the entire moai will pool their money together and hand it over to that member. Moais also help the community in many ways that they can. They volunteer, they give money, and a moai just becomes almost like another version of a family unit. It is, in a way, the chosen family, the family of friends. And so as they go through life, they always know that there is this group that will have their back until the very end. And it's really important to hear, especially for those of us that live in the Western world, at a time when we are at the loneliest we've ever been. And we tend to have the least number of friendships that we have ever had before. It's just a lonely time in history right now. And so let this be the reminder to reach out to a friend or get together with a book club twice a month, whatever works for you, but find those friendships that actually matter to you and make you feel good inside, and then prioritize them in your life. So that is Okinawa, Japan. Number 5, and last but definitely not least, is Loma Linda, California. So you might have noticed Loma Linda is the only American blue zone. And for us Americans, I'm sure we're all wondering, why is that? What are they doing that the rest of America is clearly not doing? Haha, I will tell you, my friends. Within Loma Linda, there is a high population of Seventh-day Adventists. So this is a kind of sect or denomination of Christianity. And they very strongly believe that taking care of their physical bodies, this vessel that their soul is contained in, is an important part of their worship of God. It's an important part of their relationship with God. So they take extremely dedicated care of their physical bodies. They also quote this line from Genesis in the King James Bible that says this: "And God said, Behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in that which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat." And they quote this to argue why we are meant to be vegetarian or vegan. So many Seventh-day Adventists are plant-based eaters. And what's so interesting about that is that we're therefore able to study this community because they all live in the same area. They all have a very similar lifestyle. They all have very similar religious beliefs. And yet some are still omnivores, meaning they eat meat and fruits and vegetables. Some are pescatarians, some are vegetarians, and some are vegans. And so when scientists study them, which they have, it's called the Adventist Health Studies. It's kind of this massive just stack of studies that they've done on all of the Seventh-day Adventists and people within Loma Linda, studying how their diet affects their health outcomes. They have found this stepwise progression that the closer these Seventh-day Adventists eat to a fully plant-based vegan diet, the better their health outcomes are. And they test them on a variety of factors. They test them on BMI and cholesterol and disease risk, mortality risk, all sorts of things. And in all of these studies, they find that the vegans do the best, followed by the vegetarians, followed by the pescatarians, and lastly, the omnivores. This tends to be true for BMI, for cholesterol, for heart disease risk even. In fact, it shows in the Adventist health studies that the non-vegetarian Adventists have 2 times the risk of heart disease that the vegetarian Adventists do. So we will talk a little bit more about plant-based eating a little later in this episode, but I just wanted to give you a little taste because it's rare that you have such a controlled community within which you can do studies. And here, as I mentioned, the environment is the same, the religion is the same, the lifestyle is more or less the same, and yet there are different levels of dietary patterns, and they find that stepwise progression of health. So those are the 5 blue zones. So again, we had Ikaria, Greece, Sardinia, Italy, the Nicoya Peninsula of Costa Rica, Okinawa, Japan, and Loma Linda, California. Now we're going to talk about what's called the Power 9. So these are the 9 characteristics that all 5 blue zones have in common. So if you're listening to this episode and you're wondering, okay, what can I adopt into my own life? This is where you really want to listen. And I want you, as you're listening, to think about which of these 9 characteristics resonates the most with you or intrigues you the most. What piques your interest to the point where you might decide that's the thing I want to adopt. So I'll come back to that little thought experiment at the end, but just as you're listening, think to yourself, is this the thing I could see myself adopting? And then maybe it is. Maybe that's what you focus on for 2024. So the first of the Power 9, which is focused on physical health, is moving naturally. So in all 5 blue zones, they have these simple ways of moving their bodies frequently. In many of these places, they are having to walk up hills to get to one another's houses. They are shepherding in the fields. They are gardening. So they're moving their bodies naturally. In none of these places, except for Loma Linda, do they have dumbbells and bench press machines and squat press machines. They are simply walking and running and lifting and gardening. And it is really that keeps us healthy. When the human being was built, we did not come with a set of dumbbells in our packaging. So that is a very modern Western concept. But what is important for movement is that there are 4 different types of movement that you want to make sure that you can incorporate into your daily routines. 4 types of movement are strength. So of course that is everything from push-ups to maybe you do want to use those dumbbells. It is number 2, aerobic. So running, walking, dancing, swimming, anything to get your heart rate up. Number 3, balance. So things like Tai Chi and yoga. And then number 4, which is stretching. All 4 of these are a really crucial part of having a holistically healthy and flexible, strong body. So I want you to find the form of exercise that you love and then do that. Exercise doesn't have to be something that you dread. If you don't like lifting weights, if you're not into CrossFit, don't do it. Find something else as long as you can incorporate all 4 of those into your lifestyle. Maybe instead of doing dumbbell work, you're doing your push-ups and you're still finding ways to build muscle without needing to pick up the dumbbells. So find what works for you and then do it all the time. Just stay naturally active and your body will thank you for it. The second of these Power 9, which is another form of physical health, we'll have physical health, mental health, and kind of social health, if you will, is this concept of 80% full. So it's really important to not eat to the point where you feel so stuffed, you're uncomfortable. You want to eat until you're simply not hungry anymore. That is different than eating until you're full. It also takes about 20 minutes for signals from our stomach to go to our brain to tell us that we're full. So the slower and more intentionally you eat, the more time you give for your stomach to send the signal to your brain saying, okay, buddy, I'm really full. Please stop. And when we keep just piling it in or eating quickly, we miss those signals and we end up overeating. So the reason why there's this concept of 80% full for the blue zones is that especially in Okinawa, Japan, they have this 2,500-year-old Confucian adage that says hara hachi bu, which literally means I will only eat until I'm 80% full. And unfortunately, I always hate saying this, but chronic caloric deprivation is the only method proven in every single species ever tested to elongate the life. And so I'm saying that with a grain of salt. You do not actually have to deprive yourself. In fact, please don't. But what you can do is a couple things. One, you can eat intuitively. When I say eat intuitively, I mean listen to your body's signals. If you look at a dog or even a human baby, they know when they need to go to the bathroom. They know when they're tired and they need to sleep. They know when they're hungry and they need to eat. And they don't eat more than that. They don't sleep more than that. They are able to listen to their body's cues before we grow up to an age where we are inundated with information and we have these emotional coping mechanisms such as overeating. So get back to the basics, eat slowly and intentionally, and listen to your body's cues. When you're hungry, eat. When you're not hungry, don't eat. It's as simple as that. I also like to say that eating times are completely man-made. If you get to 6 o'clock and you're not hungry, and 6 o'clock is usually dinner time, don't eat. And just learn to listen more carefully to your body's signals. So that's one method, intuitive eating. The second, especially in terms of eating a lot of these fruits and vegetables that we've been talking about, is that when you're eating mostly plant-based foods, you're actually eating something that is far less calorically dense than animal-based foods like steak or chicken or milk. And so it happens naturally that by eating the right foods, you're actually eating less calories. And then when you combine that with eating slowly and mindfully, you simply end up eating less. So that is tip number 2. The third of the Power 9 is wine at 5. So this one is interesting because obviously you hear alcohol is bad for you, and then you hear wine is good for you, and it's all very confusing. And so in the research, yes, they have found that some of the polyphenols from that dark color in wine can be really good for your health. But of course, there is a pretty tight limit. So you don't want to overdo your alcohol. When you are drinking alcohol, make sure that it is a high quality wine. And of course, limit yourself to, they say, 1 glass a day if you're going to have it every day. But just be very mindful about that. And they also say if you want this health benefit of what they call wine at 5, it doesn't have to be an alcoholic beverage. I myself don't drink at all. It doesn't make me feel good. I don't like how I feel psychologically or mentally when I've had a drink. So I'm just not into it. So instead, I might have a tea happy hour with my friends at 5, and that'll still have the stress reducing techniques behind it, and it is still a chance to get together socially. So a lot of those healing aspects of quote unquote having wine at 5 you can have without the alcohol. So just let that be a tip as well. Moving on to number 4, we have plant slant. And I'll also mention that all of these names are from the Blue Zones book written by Dan Buettner, who is an incredible writer for National Geographic. And he's the one that compiled a lot of these studies and spoke to dozens of centenarians from each of these locations to gather this information. So he's the one that came up with these really cute names. So plant slant is, of course, referring to the fact that all 5 of these communities are predominantly or 100% plant-based. So, of course, when we looked at the Adventist health studies, we saw that the vegans fared the best in terms of health outcomes when compared to their vegetarian counterparts and their omnivorous counterparts. And we see that plant slant theme throughout all 5 blue zones. Even in Costa Rica, they're eating mainly rice, beans, squash, and a lot of fruit. In Okinawa, they're getting their fresh vegetables from their garden, and they're really not eating a lot of meat. The same is true of Sardinia and Ikaria. So when we look at other studies besides the Adventist health studies, there's even one really well known from the 80s that was known as the China Project. And these researchers partnered with Oxford University to go into China and study the diet of different communities in over 65 different counties spread all throughout China. And when they studied this, which especially at the time was the most comprehensive study ever done on the connection between nutrition and health, they found exactly what the Adventist health studies found, which was that same stepwise progression of kind of that one-to-one correlation of how plant-based you are, and then therefore how low your mortality risk and disease risk is. So you can just imagine that with every kind of step increase of adding an animal product into your diet, whether it is chicken, eggs, milk, etc., that would also increase in a correlative fashion your mortality risk and disease risk. And specifically in the China project, they were looking at cancer and heart disease and found this extremely strong correlation between risk for those diseases and amount of animal-based foods consumed. So I will share plenty more about plant-based nutrition and the why and how of it in other episodes, but for now, I will leave it there and let the Adventist health studies speak for themselves and the China project, which I find to be absolutely mind-bogglingly powerful when I really study it. So that is number 4, plant slant. Number 5 is right tribe. So this is Dan Buettner's way of saying you gotta find the friends that make you feel good and surround yourself with their energy all the time. In Okinawa, they have their moais, and in Italy and Greece, they're going into the town center and they're drinking with their friends. And in each of these places, they have a dedicated way to maintain their social network, to maintain their friendships. There have actually been studies. There was one incredible study done of over 309,000 people that showed that a lack of strong social relationships in one's life actually increases the risk of premature death from all causes by a whopping 50%, which is actually an effect on mortality comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day and greater than the impacts of obesity and physical inactivity paired together. So not having close friendships, not having that social support in your life is one of the worst things you can do for your physical health. We're not even talking about mental health here. So find your crew, even if it's one person. Find someone that you can confide in and feel like yourself around, and really prioritize maintaining that friendship in your life. Number 6 is family first. So in all 5 of the blue zones, except for the American blue zone in Loma, California, all of these centenarians live in multi-generational homes. So the grandchildren are living in the same house as the parents, the grandparents, sometimes even the great-grandparents. And there have actually been so many health benefits found from living in a multi-generational home like that. There's something known as the grandmother effect, which essentially shows this incredibly powerful mutual benefit between the grandchildren and the grandparents when they live in the same home, or at least generally around one another. The children tend to do better in school, they tend to have higher IQ, and the grandparents tend to have less cognitive decline and physical decline. They tend to feel this sense of support and meaning and purpose in their lives. So there is this great mutual benefit when there are many generations living in a home, or at least in a general area together. So even if you live in the US and a multi-generational home isn't really in the cards for you, it's not what we do culturally, even though I am a big fan of one day having my entire family in a commune together. But if that is not an option for you, then just spend some intentional time with your family. Make sure you pick up the phone and you call them maybe at least once a week. Call your grandparents if they're still around. Call your siblings, your parents, and just try to carve out time and space in your life to actually go and see them as well. I'll also make a note here that if your family is not something that brings you joy or peace in this world, let's say you have a really difficult, complicated relationship with your family members, you can always go with your chosen family as well. So you can hang out with your friends and still feel that deep support and love. So in the blue zones, of course, they go with their families. That's what they do culturally, but find what works for you based on your own story and history. So that was number 6. Number 7 is belong. So belong has to do with religion and spiritual practices. And all 5 of the blue zones, including the American one because they're Seventh-day Adventists, they have a strong sense of spiritual beliefs. They have a strong sense of what they believe is right and wrong and why they believe they're here and what the whole meaning of this entire thing called life is about. And when we have those strong spiritual or religious beliefs and practices, there's kind of a sense of inner peace that comes with that. It's as if we've finally been granted this instruction manual or guidebook for life, something that makes us feel like if we live in accordance with these values and these ways, we've lived a good life. And that is a really comforting thought when you're living the human experience and all of its chaos and all of its color. So find either a religious practice, spiritual belief that works for you, or just incorporate your own rituals into your daily experience so that you can bring that sense of there's being something bigger than us out there into your day-to-day life. It'll bring you that sense of calm and peace and a feeling like there's a reason behind all of it after all. So that is number 7. Number 8 is downshift. And downshift essentially means find stress management techniques that work for you. So in some of these blue zones, they're drinking wine at 5 with their friends. In others, they are napping or gardening or shepherding or working in the vineyard. No matter what it is, they have methods to reduce the stress in their lives so that they can live more presently and intentionally. So in our day-to-day lives in this very busy Western world, we have to intentionally carve out time to reduce our stress and find an ounce of peace and serenity. So maybe that looks like sitting in silence and focusing on your breath, aka meditation, for 10 or 15 minutes a day. Maybe it means at the end of a long workday, you just lay on the ground and allow your body to ground into the earth. Energetically, it'll feel like you're being pulled down closer to the earth, and it's incredibly calming. Maybe it means that you just take a midday walk and you walk at a slower than usual pace so that you can be fully present and not get all wrapped up in your mind and your thoughts. So again, choose the stress management techniques that work for you. Maybe 2024 is your year of figuring out what does work for you and stick to that. Find practices that bring you that sense of serenity and calm each and every day, because we know that the effects of stress on our health are not positive ones. So to whatever extent that we can reduce our stress and live more mindfully, it's going to be a good thing. And then lastly, we have number 9, which is purpose. So in each of these blue zones, they have a certain word and a sense of purpose. In Costa Rica, they have the plan de vida, which means their plan for their life. Or in Okinawa, Japan, we know that they have their ikigai, their reason for being. And we also know that when we retire in the Western world and we've decided I am no longer a quote unquote productive person in society, when we make that conscious choice, that is typically the beginning of our cognitive and physical decline. And I'm not here to say that you can never retire from the strict, structured 9-to-5 institution of a career, but I think it's incredibly important to maintain a sense of being needed, to maintain a sense of purpose and meaning in your life, whether that means you spend more time with your hobbies or with your grandchildren or friends. But finding something that still makes you feel like you are making a difference and you're important, you're needed for something, that is where you can actually will yourself to keep living. It's when you have essentially given up on being a productive human, you've given up on progressing in any way or creating in any way, that we essentially have decided it's time to decline. And so if you take anything from these blue zones and that's the one that resonates, I want you to remember that it's important to find a sense of meaning in all that you do. And it doesn't have to be related to your career either. It can be related to being a parent or a friend or a daughter or an important member in the community or your church. So that is number 9, purpose. And before we wrap up today's episode, I just want to end with 3 really quick tips on how you can incorporate these into your life. Because you might be sitting there right now thinking, okay, Devin, these Power 9 sound great, but that's a lot of changes to make in my life. My life looks nothing like these blue zones. Where do I even begin? Is there a hierarchy of how important these things are? What the heck do I do to begin my own longevity journey? So I have 3 tips on how to do that. The first is to pick the low-hanging fruit first. So if you are already pescatarian, maybe you can find a few healthy and delicious vegan meals to prepare a few times a week. Or if you are already a Christian, but you don't attend church, let's say, maybe you find a local church and you go explore what their services are like. Find the thing that resonates most with you or feels the most relatable or plausible to you and give it a go. And if that is not the one for you, maybe you can go on to the next one and give that one a try. So number 1 is to pick the low-hanging fruit. Number 2 is don't attempt more than 3 blue zone secrets at a time. And the reason why that's important is because it's so easy to get so overwhelmed when you hear that there are 9 changes to make in your life that it might be easier to just not do any at all. So what I recommend is to choose the 1, 2, or 3 that you feel almost excited to incorporate into your life. Start with those, master those before you move on to another 1, 2, or 3. And the third tip is to enlist a friend or family member to do this with you. We've already learned that having that close social network is incredibly beneficial for your health. So allow that to actually aid in you adjusting your own lifestyle to be like the blue zones. We're trying to blue zonify your life right now. So if one of the Power 9 has to do with family and another Power 9 has to do with friends, maybe you enlist one family member and one friend to help you with this, and already you've checked 2 of the Power 9 off the list. And then you can choose your 1 to 3 of the Power 9 to work on together. So those are my 3 tips. And just to round out one more time, I am going to reread the Power 9 to you so that you can remember from the top to the bottom what they are. And as I read them to you, I want you to choose right here, right now, which one you want to focus on first. Which one do you resonate with most? Which one will feel the most natural to you? Which one is calling you to incorporate it into your life in 2024? So the Power 9, the 9 characteristics that all 5 blue zones have in common are the following. Number 1 is move naturally, Remember, you don't even have to pick up the dumbbells if you absolutely hate them. Just move in a way where you are getting a little bit of aerobic exercise, strength, balance, and stretching, and find something you enjoy doing so that you can do it all the time. Number 2 is 80% full. Only eat until you're 80% full. Hara hachi bu, as they say in Okinawa, Japan. Number 3 is wine at 5. So whether you're actually drinking some high quality, high polyphenol count red wine with friends, or you're just enjoying a cup of tea, find a way to get together with others socially and wind down a little bit. Number 4 is plant slant. So find a way to fill up most of your plate with greens, grains, tubers, fruit. Eat things straight from trees, bushes, and the ground. Eat directly from the earth. The earth is here to nourish us and support us. And then if you want to eat any animal-based products, whether it is chicken, fish, eggs, dairy, etc., make that the cherry on top of your meal rather than the bulk of your dish. Number 5 is right tribe. Find your group of friends where you feel warm and fuzzy with them. You can be your full, authentic self when you're with them, and then prioritize them in your life. Give them a call, see them when you can, and just make sure that you reciprocate that sense of support and love right back to them. Number 6 is family first. Find time in your busy life to see your family or to call your family. And again, if you have that complicated relationship with your family, maybe you spend time with your chosen family, aka your friends as well. As long as you have that sense of home and groundedness and support from loved ones. Number 7 is belong. So incorporate religious practices or services or spiritual rituals into your life, just giving yourself a chance to find that sense of calm and serenity in your everyday life. Number 8 is downshift, finding methods and ways for you to relax a little bit, finding ways to take heavier sighs and longer exhales, finding ways to surrender and let go of all of the control and the need to produce and achieve and create. Just relax sometimes. So maybe that looks like meditation, maybe it looks like deep breaths, maybe it just looks like getting together with friends, but find a way to relax. And then 9, have that sense of purpose, a reason for being if you can. So right now, decide which 1, 2, or 3 you yourself want to work on. Which ones you want to add into your own life to make it a little richer, a little more colorful, and a lot healthier. I wish you the best in that journey. May 2024 be the year that you blue zonify your own life so that you just live a little healthier and happier. And as they say in Sardinia, Italy, Ikaria. May you live to be 100. I will wrap up this week's episode. As always, if you enjoyed the episode, please rate and review the podcast wherever you find your podcasts, the Apple Podcasts app, Spotify, subscribe to my channel on YouTube, give this video a like and comment. I will definitely read every note that you send my way. Until next week, my friends, I'm sending you all the love and all of the hugs. Okay, bye for now.